The Atrial Fibrillation Symposium, which was originally called the Boston AF Symposium, was started in 1995, so it'll be entering its 25th year in 2020. And it was started really out of the recognition that back in the mid-90s, there was clearly a global epidemic of atrial fibrillation building, but that was at a time that was in the pre-ablation era, and electrophysiologists were not particularly interested in the disease, in part because we didn't have much to offer outside of what general cardiologists and internists could provide. And the meeting has evolved from a one-day, relatively small meeting to quite a large 3-day meeting that covers the breadth of atrial fibrillation, but does it in a very small and intimate environment, in the sense that all the attendees are able to be at the entire meeting. This is not designed to compete with very large meetings. The meeting is designed to gather leading experts from around the world with a large audience of people interested in AFib, to gather essentially in a relatively intimate environment, meaning everybody in one place for 3 days, to cover the breadth of what we know about atrial fibrillation and to take it right to the sort of cutting edge of the most current therapies. And the current structure of the meeting involves a day of very advanced looks into new technologies. So for example, in 2019, we had a half-day session on not necessarily electrophysiology related, but cardiology and arrhythmia related, potentially anyway, technologies like CRISPR, robotics, AI, quantum computing, a host of things that may seem to be somewhat distant from what we do today, but will very likely impact how we take care of patients over the next 20 years. And that's a very sort of distant look into the future. That was followed by a series of lightning round presentations, very brief focused presentations on about 10 new technologies in the field of AF, mostly technologies that are medical device related, but also some new pharmacology, new antiarrhythmic drugs in development. And there are a number of other components to the meeting, including in-depth looks at current technologies, new but current technologies that involve new mapping systems, new ablation systems, and a host of new safety technologies that improve the efficiency and safety of the procedure, particularly AF ablation. We also have a large segment of the meeting dedicated to clinical trials. So for example, in 2019, we had a whole session of several hours dedicated to the Cabana trial, which was clearly a revolution in how we look at AF ablation and how we manage patients with new onset or newly diagnosed AF. And it wasn't a rehashing of the trial, but it was a discussion of controversial areas. There was a debate, and a lot of discussion and debate about how to interpret the trial and how to apply it clinically to the care of patients. We also have a late-breaking clinical trial session, so new clinical observations and new trial data have a venue for presentation. And then several sessions devoted to new approaches to, say, complex ablation beyond PVI. So we had a lot of discussion around how to achieve durable pulmonary vein isolation, and then many discussions about what to do when pulmonary vein isolation is not enough. What are the targets? What's the basic science? So we integrate basic science into all of these clinical sessions. And there was a lot of discussion about rotors and scroll waves and focal sources, and then an integration of those basic findings, basic science findings, into clinical studies. So that again is a unique opportunity to sort of get fully updated on the field through a combination of basic science and clinical science. We also had a large session on stroke prevention, where there was a lot of discussion about new data on novel anticoagulants and a great deal of discussion on left atrial appendage closure devices. And all of these topics will be revisited in a different way in 2020. The last thing I would mention that I think is unique to the meeting is that we have a lot of time dedicated to complex cases, individual cases, and also case transmissions of procedures. And the beauty of those sessions is that they present complex problems that are not easily addressed by existing data or existing guidelines. And with 66 faculty from all countries in the world that represent the most experienced people in the field, it gives the audience an opportunity to hear about approaches that these individuals use for complex problems that are not addressed easily by existing data. And that's a unique opportunity that you can't find in the textbooks and you can't find in the literature. And that's something that we certainly expect to leverage in 2020.